Good evening and welcome to the Rugby Portobello Trust quiz. I hope everyone's out there ready to answer some fairly difficult questions and some fairly easy ones in the course of the quiz. It is brilliant that you've turned up for this incredible charity, so thank you very much for coming. There is a target to reach tonight, which is £10,000. That's not a government target. You can't count all your donations twice or say it's in the post. If you're going to make one, you've really got to make one and then we'll count it. But we're already halfway there. And I'm hoping that during the course of this, you'll be inspired to give some more money to support the work of the Rugby Portobello Trust, who are a brilliant organisation. And you can donate online by visiting the website. So the Trust's been working with some of the most vulnerable and at-risk children and young people in North Kensington for 136 years. RPT runs programmes all day throughout the week and at weekends and in the school holidays, when there were holidays, but in all the bits, to make sure that families and children who really need support are getting it. And they continue to do that work. They run free programmes to help build skills, confidence, and supporting people to overcome disadvantage and realise their potential, laying the foundation for people to develop into confident members of their communities. So once again, can I say, and it will get boring, but I'll keep saying it, please support the work of the Trust. And the website is www.justgiving.com/campaign/RPT lockdown quiz, which is what we're about to do. So this is just to give you the rules, and there are no breaking the rules, sorry, unless you're a government advisor, obviously, when you can just make your own up and do whatever you like, and we'll see what happens. But for everyone else, the game has 6 rounds with 10 questions in each round. I didn't put that very clearly. 10 questions in each round, 6 rounds. So you can get a maximum of 52 points for the whole quiz. There'll be a 5-minute break after the first 3 rounds where you can go and refill the kettle or the wine bottle or whatever your choice is. And every 2 rounds, we'll give you the answers and we'll tell you how many points in each round. And I'm afraid you've got to mark your own answers. It's like GCSEs and A-levels. Give yourself a grade, but try and be accurate and not too encouraging with answers that aren't really there. So I hope you're playing as individuals or as teams. All that's fine. If there is any question about any answer, the question master is always right. That's me. And there's no way of disputing it. You can't get through to me. So the chat function is on, but I'll ignore it if you don't agree with me. So it's off during the questions, apparently, so you can't cheat, but it's back on at the end. It's back on during the scores, so you can compare notes and see who's winning and see what's going on. So I think those are all the rules. It says here, have fun. That's a government directive. I think we're ready to go. I mean, it must be time for me to introduce the first of our guest questioners. The first of our guest questioners is Daisy Goodwin, the amazing Daisy Goodwin, who is a screenwriter, novelist, television producer, champion of poetry, the woman who gave us the fantastic Victoria series. I mean, on ITV. She is, in fact, TV royalty. It is Daisy Goodwin. I'm
Thanks,
providing the applause.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't wear my tiara. Sorry, you didn't wear your tiara, Ian.
I did. Is there a roundabout Queen Victoria by any chance?
There might possibly be a roundabout Queen Victoria. It's a subject very close to my heart. Yes, there might be. And if you've watched the series, you would get all the questions right, obviously.
Okay, well, I'm going to go away and join in.
Okay.
I'll get my pen and pencil. And good luck, everybody. And good luck, Daisy.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay. Right. So this is round 1, and round 1 isn't about Queen Victoria. Round 1 is what you might call a showbiz and trivia round. So it's a nice, easy introduction to this quiz. And there are 6 questions, and the last question is a picture question. So I hope you will, at least you should be able to do some of them. This isn't too difficult this round. And it may or may not reflect the viewing I've been doing in lockdown. Anyway, so question number 1 is about the titles of a Bond film. Which Bond film has, that's James Bond, of course, has a title sequence where the credits come up over the gyrating navel of a belly dancer? Is it A, Die Another Day, B, From Russia with Love, C, The Spy Who Loved Me, or D, Octopussy? So Bond film with the credits come up over the gyrating navel of a belly dancer. You might say that all Bond films come up over some kind of gyrating woman, but this one is very specific to the belly dancer. Right, question number 2. In 1930, George Arliss became the first British actor to win an Oscar, and he did so by playing which British politician? Was it A, Pitt the Younger, B, Winston Churchill, C, Disraeli, or D, Lord Melbourne? So that's the first British actor to win an Oscar in 1930, and he did so playing a British politician. And was it Pitt, Churchill, Disraeli, or Lord Melbourne? Question number 3. This one you might not be able to guess by Google. Which word links the term for a 20-measure bottle of champagne with an opera by Kanye West? It's one word, which means both a bottle that contains 20 smaller bottles of champagne and an opera by Kanye West. Okay, now got to be careful with this one. Question number 4. In 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which one of my favorite films, how many times does Hugh Grant say the unembellished F word in the opening sequence? So how many times does Hugh Grant say the unembellished? That's just the straight word with no extra bits at the end, no suffixes, in the opening sequence of 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Question number 5. So this is a question about the world's most famous pearl, La Peregrina. And there are 4 statements about it, one of which is not true, and I want you to identify the one that isn't true. So A, the Peregrina was once lost down the back of a sofa in Windsor Castle. B, Napoleon gave it to Josephine as a consolation prize for divorcing her. C, Elizabeth Taylor rescued it from the jaws of her Pekingese puppy, who had found it in the shag pile of the suite they were staying in Las Vegas. And D, Philip II of Spain bought the jewel for his daughter, but liked it so much that he decided to keep it for himself. So these are 4 statements about La Peregrina, the world's most famous pearl, and one of them is not true, and I want you to identify which one. And on the subject of jewels, I have assembled 5 jewel sporting embonpoint, which I hope I've pronounced correctly. 2 of them are fictional and the other 3 are real people. So what I'm looking for is the name of the actress in the 2 fictional ones, and I want the name of the real people in the other 3. As you can see, they've all got very, very magnificent jewels around their necks. And I think you can always tell which are the real ones and which are the fakes. Right, so I'll just recap round one. Question number one, which Bond film has a title sequence where the credits come up over the gyrating navel of a belly dancer? Question number two, George Earlis became the first British actor to win an Oscar, and he did so by playing which British politician? Pitt, Disraeli, Winston Churchill, or Melbourne? Number three is, I'm looking for the word which links a 20 measure bottle of champagne and an opera by Kanye West. Question number four is, I'm looking for the number of times that Hugh Grant says the straight F word with no suffixes or prefixes or anything else, the straight F word at the beginning of For Weddings and a Funeral. And question number five is, I've given you 4 facts about the famous pearl La Peregrina, and I want you to identify which one of those facts isn't true. It did have the most incredible history, La Peregrina. It's an amazing story in itself. So any of those facts could be true, but one of them isn't. And the last question that's coming up here is, I've asked you to identify these magnificent jewel sporting embonpoint, a word which I'm really getting to know and love. And as you can see, some of them are wearing real jewels and some of them are wearing not so real jewels. And the two that are wearing the lesser jewels are the two actresses. The other 2 or 3, but I'm looking for the names of the people wearing the jewels. Okay, and now I think we are going to go to, we're going to go to round 2, but in between, I'm just going to remind you that now would be a very good time, if you're enjoying this, to make a donation to the Rugby Portobello Trust. And I think the website, which is justgiving.com, anyway, Rugby Portobello lockdown quiz. And it doesn't matter how much you give, £10, £20, £50, £100, all of it will be very welcome and go to an incredibly good cause. So let's get on to round 2, Victoria, which is about Victoria, Queen Victoria even. I was once told off by a member of the royal family for referring to her as Victoria and not as Queen Victoria, so I will call her Queen Victoria. And this is a round which, if you've seen Victoria, Queen Victoria, you will possibly do better in than if you haven't. And question number 1 is coming up. So Queen Victoria was, people tried to kill her more than any other British monarch. I don't know why, they just did. So what I'm looking for is the number of attempts there were on Queen Victoria's life. Was it A, 4, B, 13, C, 7, or D, 5? So that's how many attempts were there on Queen Victoria's life. None of them, of course, were successful. Quite often because people would fire at her with pistols that weren't loaded, which seems to kind of defeat the object, but there you go. And question number 2. So Prince Albert obviously was very alarmed by all these attempts on his wife's life. So he, because he was a very ingenious guy, decided to invent something that would protect her. And so what of these following options was the one that he invented? Was it A, a reinforced bonnet? Was it B, a chainmail parasol? Was it C, a papier-mâché replica of his wife, which was placed in the carriage window as a decoy? Or was it D, a telescopic hat pin with a rapier point? So one of those was actually invented by Prince Albert. And if you did watch the series, you will know the answer to this question. And now question number 3. So Prince Albert, one of my favourite characters in history, and I have to say the first speech he made was at the anti-slavery convention, so he gets top marks for that. Prince Albert was a man of many hobbies, and he held one in common with the fictional hero of P.G. Woodhouse's Blandings Castle series, Lord Emsworth. And they both won medals for the same pursuit, Prince Albert and Lord Emsworth. Can you make a guess what that pursuit is? So Lord Emsworth, Prince Albert, what do they have in common? Question number 4. So Queen Victoria in her lifetime had 9 children. Now, when she died in 1901, some of them had died. What I want you to guess is how many of them were still alive when she died in 1901. So of her 9 children, how many of them were still alive when Victoria died in 1901? And question number 5. So this is my favourite story about Queen Victoria. Just before she died, she summoned her doctor, Dr. Reed, to see her, and she gave him this very elaborate list of things that she wanted placed in her coffin, which was not obviously a very big place because she was quite a small woman. Anyway, and here are some of the things that she wanted to be placed in her coffin, her quite crowded coffin. And one of them is not true. So she asked for A, a sprig of heather from Balmoral, B, a cloak belonging to Prince Albert, C, a Bible, and D, John Brown's mother's wedding ring. So that's one of those things she didn't ask for. So you have to identify the one thing on that list that she didn't request Dr. Reed to put in her coffin after her death. And question number 6, okay. Which of these actors has never played Queen Victoria? Okay, you have to identify the one that has never played Queen Victoria. Is it A, Kathy Bates, B, Miranda Richardson, C, Anna Neagle, or D, Terry Jones? So what I'm looking for is the one actor in this list who hasn't played Queen Victoria. And if you've got those, I think we'll have a recap of this round. So question number 1, how many attempts were there on Victoria's life? 4, 7, 13 or 5? Question number 2 was a list of things that Prince Albert had invented to protect his wife from assassins. One of them is true. Was it a bonnet, a chainmail parasol, a papier-mâché replica of Victoria, or a telescopic hat pin with a rapier point? Question number 3 is, what do Prince Albert and Lord Emsworth of Blandings Castle have in common? They've both won silver medals for one thing. What is it? Can you guess? Question number 4, Queen Victoria had 9 children, but how many of those children were still alive when she died in 1901? Question number 5 is about what Queen Victoria wanted in her coffin after her death. And she gave her doctor a list of things she wanted in her coffin: sprig of heather, Albert's cloak, a Bible, John Brown, her Scottish friend's mother's wedding ring. One of those things is not true. And question number 6, which of these actors has never played Queen Victoria? It's quite hard to find an actor who hasn't played Queen Victoria, but one of these actors hasn't played Queen Victoria, and I'd like you to identify which one. And now I'm going to remind you to support the work of the Rugby Portobello Trust by donating online to www.justgiving.com campaign RPT lockdown quiz. And it doesn't matter how much you give, but if you were to give £10, it would purchase paper and markers for our homework club, supporting more than 100 children every week. £20 would purchase a week of art supplies for Junior Club, which supports 350 children every year. £50 can purchase 1 week of food for Magic Mums, which supports some of the most at-risk mums in North Kensington. And £100 can buy equipment for Football Academy, supporting 110 local children as they engage in organised sport for the first time. And it's a fantastically good cause and it does brilliant things. So if you can go online and donate, not that you'd be going online to Google the answers or anything like that, but if you were to go online and donate, that would be a brilliant thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Daisy. That was brilliant. You're going to give the answers now, and I'm going to go away again.
Okay, all right. I'm going to give the answers. I thought you were. Okay, I'm going to give the answers. Jolly good.
Yes, no,
So,
I couldn't resist the chance to just pop up. Good.
Okay, bye. Okay, so now I'm going to give the answers for round one. And so question number one, the answer to question number one is, of course, B, From Russia with Love, which, as you know, is set in Istanbul. So that's why, obviously, they had a belly dancer in the credits. Question number two, the answer to that is Disraeli. Amazingly, the Disraeli in Love was a huge hit in America in 1930, and George Arliss plays Disraeli. Question number three is, the answer is Nebuchadnezzar, which is the name for that very enormous bottle of champagne that contains 20 smaller ones, and also of the opera that was written by Kanye West last year. Question number four, the answer is 5. Yes, Hugh Grant says the unembellished F word 5 times at the beginning of 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And the answer to question number 5 is B. Napoleon didn't give La Peregrina to Josephine as a consolation prize for divorcing her. He could have done, but he didn't. And now the answer to the picture round. A was, of course, Kate Winslet in Titanic. That's a very obviously fake jewel, I have to say. They could have done better on that, I think. B is Princess Diana, of course, and that's clearly not a fake necklace. C is Elizabeth Taylor wearing the famous Burton Taylor diamond that Richard Burton gave her, and which I think she might have paid for, though. And D is, of course, Anne Boleyn, and E is Eva Green in Casino Royale, wearing the necklace that is a plot point, I seem to remember. So I wonder how you all did. I hope you did brilliantly. And now I'm going to give you the answers for the Victoria round. So the answer to question number 1, how many attempts were there on Victoria's life, was 7. There were 7 attempts. Question number 2, what invention did Albert make to protect his wife? And the answer was, unbelievably, a chainmail parasol. But I don't think Victoria used it very often because it was incredibly heavy. But it was the thought that counted, I think. Question number 3 is the thing that Albert and Lord Emsworth had in common was they both won silver medals for pig breeding. And I think Albert actually won £25 in the agricultural fair. So that's what they have in common. Question number 4, when Victoria died, only 6 of her children were still alive. Leopold was a haemophilia. Alice had died of typhus or diphtheria, something like that. And Alfred, her second son, had, I'm afraid, drunk himself to death. Question number 5, the answer to that is the thing she didn't ask to be put in the coffin was a Bible. Everything else was on the list of things she wanted: Albert's cloak, John Brown's mother's wedding ring, and a sprig of heather from Balmoral, but she wasn't interested in having a Bible with her on her journey into the next life. And question number 6, the answer to that is the only actor on that list who hasn't played Miranda Richardson, as far as I know, hasn't played Queen Victoria, as far as I know, is Miranda Richardson. She's played a lot of queens, but not Victoria. So that was the answers. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope you'll, be generous and give to the Rugby Portobello appeal. It does amazing work. And now I'm going to hand you back to Ian.
Hello, Daisy. Brilliant questions. Really good and fascinating embonpoint round.
Yes, embonpoint. That's just a word we just like. We just like it. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay,
well,
brilliant.
Thanks a lot with the rest of the quiz.
Yeah, will do. Okay. Okay, that's goodbye to Daisy. Thank you very much indeed to her for that round. So that's 2 rounds down. Time for round 3. And round 3 is this is me as host now. This is fictional geography. This is places that do and don't exist. It becomes really clear. So I think we should just get straight on with it. It's round 3. Dubrovnik in Croatia is the setting for which fictional city in Game of Thrones? Is it A, White Harbour, B, King's Landing, C, Old Town, or D, Lannisport? This is a Game of Thrones questions. It shows you the level that the questions are going to be pitched at. White Harbour, King's Landing, Old Town, or Lannisport? That's Dubrovnik in Croatia. Okay, that's question 1. Don't despair. There's some other questions that aren't about Game of Thrones. Well, 1 or 2. Question 2. The TV series Chernobyl, was it actually filmed? Was it filmed in Latvia? Was it filmed B, in Slovenia, C, in Slovakia, D, in Lithuania? The TV series Chernobyl, not actually filmed in Chernobyl, surprisingly. Was it A, Latvia, B, Slovenia, C, Slovakia, D, Lithuania? Question 3. In the epic Western movie Heaven's Gate, starring Chris Christopherson, which educational establishment substituted for Harvard University? So what was pretending to be Harvard? Was it A, Magdalen College, Cambridge, B, Mansfield College, Oxford, C, Trinity College, Dublin, or D, St John's College, Durham? What was pretending to be Harvard? Magdalen, Cambridge, Mansfield, Oxford, Trinity, Dublin, St John's, Durham. Question 4. In the cult 1960s art film If, directed by Lindsay Anderson, the film shows an armed uprising by boys at a public school against the staff. Which public school was this filmed at? Was it A, Cheltenham Boys' School, B, Tunbridge, C, Charterhouse, or D, Haileybury? Which public school was the anarchic revolutionary If filmed at? Cheltenham Boys' School, Tunbridge, Charterhouse, or Haileybury? You can confer, obviously, and I hope you are. Unless you're on your own when you can't confer with anyone, but that doesn't matter. Question 5. The Hogwarts Express goes from platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross Station, between platforms 9 and 10. Which 2 platforms at this station were the actual film location for the scene in the Harry Potter films? The train was filmed coming out actually from, was it A, platforms 1 and 2, B, platforms 4 and 5, C, platforms 11 and 12, or D, platforms 18 and 19? Which platforms at King's Cross did the Hogwarts Express actually come out of in the film? 1 and 2, 4 and 5, 11 and 12, 18 and 19. Six, going a bit more upmarket, but not much. Thomas Hardy invented a lot of towns in the fictional county of Wessex. So this round, you have to spot which one of these towns is a real West Country town and which are made up. The rest are made up by Hardy, Thomas Hardy. So there's one real West Country town. Is it A, Oakbury Fitzpiers, B, Hazelbury Bryan, C, Longpuddle, or D, Shotford Forum? Which of those towns is a real West Country town in the United Kingdom, and which are fictional towns made up by Thomas Hardy? Oakbury Fitzpiers, Hazelbury Bryan, Longpuddle, and Shotford Forum. Question 7. In Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, Gulliver goes to the country of Lilliput. And in this first section of the book, Lilliput basically represents England. What country then is Blefuscu? It's my favourite book, unsurprisingly. Is Blefuscu A, Spain, B, Scotland, C, Ireland, or D, France? A, Spain, B, Scotland, C, Ireland, and D, France. That's the imaginary kingdom of Blefuscu, right next to Lilliput. Question 8. The science fiction hit film Blade Runner, starring Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer, was made in 1984 and set in the real city of Los Angeles. But which year in the future was it set? It was made in 1984. Which year did they imagine this dystopian future would be? Was it A, 2019, B, 2033, C, 2055, or D, 2090? Which year in the future? 2019, 2033, 2055, 2090? Question 9. Canaletto's paintings of the city of Venice were hugely popular in his time, but what was the most famous complaint of the grand tourists who bought these paintings? Was it A, they were too expensive for the British tourist? B, Canaletto painted too many pictures, thus flooding the market? C, he painted churches in the wrong places and bent the Grand Canal round the wrong way? Or D, he painted elaborate Venetian festivals that didn't actually exist? What was the most famous complaint by people who bought Canalettos? Too expensive for the British tourist, he painted too many pictures and flooded the market. C, he painted churches in the wrong place and bent the Grand Canal the wrong way. Or D, he painted elaborate Venetian festivals that did not exist. And question 10, this isn't multiple choice, this is a single answer. What is special about the town of Laregub in Dylan Thomas's Under Milk Wood? It's the famous poem Under Milk Wood, which was dramatised, BBC Radio, and subsequently put on stage and film. But what is special about the town of Laregub in Wales in Dylan Thomas's Under Milk Wood? That's question 10 on round 3. So a quick recap. Question 1, Dubrovnik in Croatia, the setting for which fictional city in Game of Thrones? White Harbour, Old Town, King's Landing, Lannisport. Question 2, where was the TV series Chernobyl actually filmed? Latvia, Slovenia, Slovakia, Lithuania. Question 3, in the epic Western movie Heaven's Gate, which educational establishment was pretending to be Harvard? Magdalen, Cambridge, Trinity, Dublin, Mansfield, Oxford, St John's, Durham. I've read those slightly out of order. A, Magdalen, B, Mansfield, C, Trinity, D, St John's. Should be up on the screen. 4, in If, Lindsay Anderson's If, which was the public school? Was it A, Cheltenham Boys' School, B, Tunbridge, C, Charterhouse, D, Haileybury? 5, the Hogwarts Express goes from platform 9 3/4. Which 2 platforms in real life was the film location? Was it A, 1 and 2, B, 4 and 5, C, 11 and 12, D, 18 and 19? C, Thomas Hardy, the books of Thomas Hardy. Which is the real West Country town? Is it Oakbury Fitzpiers, Hazelbury Bryan, Longpuddle, or Shotford Forum? Question 7. In Gulliver's Travels, next to Lilliput is Blefuscu. The country, is that A, Spain, B, Scotland, C, Ireland, or D, France? Question 8. The science fiction hit Blade Runner, set in which year in the future? Made in 84. Was it set in A, 2019, B, 2033, C, 2055, D, 2090? Question 9. History of art, Canaletto. His paintings of the city of Venice, hugely popular. What was the main complaint? They were too expensive for the British tourist. B, he painted too many pictures, thus flooding the market. C, he painted churches in the wrong places and bent the Grand Canal around the wrong way. Or D, he painted elaborate Venetian festivals that didn't exist. And question 10, what's special about the town of Ladagub in Dylan Thomas's Under Milk Wood? That's it. That's the recap for round 3. As we stand at the moment, the total is £6,355. So we're about halfway through and we're just over halfway towards the total. So do please take the time to be generous, to give on the webpage to see if we can actually achieve that target and do it absolutely honestly. Excellent. I think now we're going to have a 5-minute break. So everybody do please come back. Obviously, that's the main thing. But go and have a quick break, refresh your weary brains, and there are another 3 rounds to go. 1 from me and 2 from Jenni Russell. Well worth coming back to, and I'm sure hers will be a lot cleverer than the ones you're about to get from me. So everybody, 5-minute break. We will see you very shortly. Okay, hello, and welcome back. I hope you had a good break, if a short one, and we're going straight on. I believe it's time for another round of questions. It is, it's going to be round 4, but there's a quick message first about the trust, which again. If you just bear with me, I would just like to give you a little bit of information about what you've been supporting. In the last 12 months, the Rugby Portobello Trust gave intensive long-term support to more than 1,300 people, including wraparound support to whole families. The Rugby Portobello Trust has a small team of about 25 staff, but it's supported by an astounding 220 volunteers, who are the recent recipient of the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, which is the group equivalent of an MBE. It's a testament to the outstanding work taking place here. So it is a really good cause and well worth supporting tonight, in between obviously proving you're cleverer than everybody else around you. It's 85% funded through events such as this, the charity, such as the lockdown quiz. And because of the coronavirus pandemic, most of the main events have been cancelled or postponed indefinitely. I mean, it's a really difficult time for charities, and the Rugby Portobello Trust is no exception. So please, since we've got an event, it's a remote event and a virtual event, but it's still a real event, please use this chance to give generously on the Just Giving page, which is www.justgiving.com/campaign/RPT lockdown quiz. It is now time for round 4. This is my favourite round, obviously, because it's mine. And this is Match the Ruler with the Slightly Silly Title. And it's a list of rulers in the world and a list of titles which have been given to them. You just have to match them up, who got the title. So I'm going to run through the rulers first, then the titles, and then you have to match them. That's it. That's the whole round. So, A, Her Majesty the Queen. B, Prince Charles. C, Kim Jong-il, the father of Kim Jong-un. D, Idi Amin, the late dictator of Uganda. E, the Ottoman Emperor Mehmed IV. F, the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. G, Augustus Caesar. H, President Xi of China. I, Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia. And J, Empress Daenerys Stormborn. And when I said there would be no more Game of Thrones references, I was lying. There's just this one. So those are the rulers. And what are their titles? 1, Protector of the Universe. 2, First Citizen and Father of the Country. 3, The Helper of the Cows. 4, Eternal Bosom of Hot Love. 5, Leader of the Central Leading Group for Comprehensively Deepening Reform. 6, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and the fishes of the sea. 7, The Star of the North. 8, Admiral in the Navy of Nebraska. 9, First of her name, the Breaker of Chains. And 10, Steadfast Guardian of the Tomb of Jesus Christ. So, those are the rulers, those are the titles. Who has which title? The Queen, Prince Charles, Kim Jong-un, Idi Amin, the Ottoman Emperor Mehmed IV, the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, Augustus Caesar, President Xi of China, Catherine the Great, and Empress Daenerys Stormborn. And the titles: 1, Protector of the Universe. 2, First Citizen and Father of the Country. 3, The Helper of the Cows. 4, Eternal Bosom of Hot Love. 5, Leader of the Central Leading Group for Comprehensively Deepening Reform. 6, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea. 7, The Star of the North. 8, Admiral in the Navy of Nebraska. 9, first of her name, the breaker of chains. And 10, steadfast guardian of the tomb of Jesus Christ. That's it. Match the title with the ruler. And there's a bonus question. Yes, there is absolutely going to be a bonus question. And that bonus question is coming to you from our sponsor, who's Miles Meacock, who is from Stratton Parker. Miles, good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
Very, very nice to be able to welcome a sponsor. Certainly nothing I've done in any of my previous lives. Yes, you're the sponsor for this event and you're going to ask your question. Can I ask you to ask it?
Thank you very much, Ian. Good evening. And once again this year, Stratton Parker are thrilled to support the Rugby Portobello Trust for our 10th consecutive year. And on behalf of the firm, I'm doubly honoured to join this panel of extremely wise quizmasters, even if it is just for a bonus question. And my question is obviously property related. And if you know anything about Notting Hill, you have an advantage. My question is, Stratton Parker recently sold 2 properties in Notting Hill, one on Kensington Park Gardens and one on Bayswater Road. With which famous children's novelist and playwright were they both closely associated? So if you don't know Notting Hill and you're not up on your famous children's novelists, you could be at a disadvantage. But Stratton Parker recently sold 2 properties in Notting Hill, one on Kensington Park Gardens and one on Bayswater Road. With which famous children's novelist and playwright were they both closely associated? I think my cameo role is over. I'm now handing back to you, Ian, and I think you're going to deliver some answers to rounds 3, 4, and the bonus question.
Yes. For all those who put David Williams, get ready to be disappointed. Yes, some answers coming up. Thank you very much, Miles. He's frozen, he's gone. And so, yes, it's time for some answers. And here they are. This was the fictional geography. So, question 1. The answer, the city of Dubrovnik, was the answer King's Landing. Question 2. Sorry, answer 2. Chernobyl was filmed in Lithuania, the TV series. 3. Heaven's Gate, Harvard was played by Mansfield Oxford, and I was an extra at the time. You can spot me just behind Chris Christopherson. Question 4, and the answer is If was filmed at Cheltenham Boys' School. Lindsay Anderson's If filmed at Cheltenham Boys' School. Question 5, and the answer was the Hogwarts Express went out between platforms 4 and 5. They filmed it there for the films. Answer 6, the real town in the West Country is Hazelbury Bryan. The rest were made up by Hardy. Question 7. Blefuscu in Gulliver's Travels, the country next to Lilliput, is France, a similar kingdom in his eyes. Question 8. Blade Runner was filmed in the scary future year of 2019. That was A, 2019. The future was in fact last year. Question 9. The answer was Canaletto. The main complaint about him was he sold tourists these pictures and they got to Venice and found that he'd painted churches in the wrong places and bent the Grand Canal the wrong way. And the last question, Dylan Thomas in Under Milk Wood, Ladegub, the town is bugger all, spelt backwards. Dylan Thomas's joke. And that's it. Those are the answers to round 3. Now, round 4, there's a complicated chart, and you can see who has which title. But if you're ready, the Queen is an admiral in the Navy of Nebraska. Prince Charles has the Maasai title Helper of the Cows. Kim Jong-il was actually dubbed Eternal Bosom of Hot Love by a workers' cooperative body in North Korea. Idi Amin gave himself the title Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea. The Ottoman Emperor Mehmed IV was the guardian of the tomb of Jesus Christ, the Ottoman Emperor Mehmed. The Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, who built the Taj Mahal, was known as the protector of the universe. Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor, disguised this by calling himself the first citizen and father of the country when he took supreme power. President Xi of China is the leader of the Central Leading Group for Comprehensively Deepening Reform. Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, was known as the Star of the North, described by Voltaire. Empress Daenerys Stormborn, this is obviously the most important question, was first of her name the Breaker of Chains, and obviously the Unburnt and Mother of Dragons, for those of you who need more. So that's it. Those were my questions. Now the all-important bonus question and answer from our sponsor, Strutton Parker. Strutton Parker sold the 2 properties. The famous children's novelist and the playwright was J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan. So those are all the answers to round 3 and the bonus rounds. So it's now time, round 3 and 4 and the bonus. It's now time for 5 and 6, and it's time to introduce your next quiz mistress. It is Jenni Russell, journalist, editor, broadcaster, columnist for the Times, columnist for the New York Times, very good column this week. The quite extraordinary talent and voice that is Jenni Russell. Jenni, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hello, Ian. Well, it's a good thing that I've had a couple of glasses of wine, or I'd be blushing at that introduction. I think I should do this kind of quiz more often. Nobody ever says anything as nice to me in real life. It's great appearing on a platform.
It's virtual flattery.
I just want to tell the nation that when we were doing the rehearsal, Ian was looking absolutely fantastic in a pale blue tank top, and it's with great regret that I see he's not reproduced that tonight.
Yeah, I thought I would spare the general public that particular item from my wardrobe.
I think you could have set a whole fashion trend running, honestly.
Yeah,
Time for a revival.
Right, I'm going now if you're going to bring up tank tops. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you. See you in a few minutes. And it's time for my rounds. Now, I'm the only person who has got rounds that I'm afraid do not include bosoms. Ian's round included a question about bosoms, and Daisy's round, of course, featured some rather splendid ones. Daisy's special subject is Queen Victoria. I'm sorry to say that my round is a little less cheerful. It's going to test your knowledge of pandemics. Pandemics past as well as pandemics current. So for the first cheerful question, I'm going to read you a whole series of quotes, and then I'm going to ask you who it is who wrote them. So the first quote is, "The sick and the dying found most compassion from those who had recovered from the disease. They knew what it was like from experience and now had no fear of it for themselves. For the same man was never at risk twice, at least never fatally. And such persons not only received the congratulations of others, but also, in the elation of the moment, half entertained the vain hope that they were, in the future, safe from any illness whatsoever." Who wrote this? Was it A, Livy, B, Thucydides, C, Gibbon, or D, Hippocrates? So which historian wrote this? Livy, Thucydides, Gibbon, or Hippocrates? Quote number 2. Somebody wrote, "Great fears of the sicknesses here in the city, it being said that 2 or 3 houses are already shut up. God preserve us all." Then the same person wrote 8 months later, "I have never lived so merrily as I have done in this plague time." Was this A, John Milton, B, Daniel Defoe, C, Samuel Pepys, or D, John Bunyan? Who do you suppose wrote this? Was it Milton, Defoe, Pepys, or Bunyan? Question number 3. Which writer wrote this paragraph? "It's striking that Native Americans involved no devastating epidemic diseases to give to Europeans in return for the many devastating epidemic diseases that Indians received from the Old World." Was the person who wrote this A, William McNeill, B, Jared Diamond, C, Eric Hobsbawm, D, Yuval Noah Harari? Sorry, I think that was Harari. I always pronounce it wrongly. Who wrote this paragraph? That Native Americans evolved no devastating diseases to give to Europeans in return for the many devastating diseases that Indians received from the Old World. Was this A, William McNeill, B, Jared Diamond, C, Eric Hobsbawm, B, Yuval Noah Harari? Question number 4. Who wrote this piece of wisdom? Everybody knows that pestilences have a way of recurring in the world, yet somehow we find it hard to believe in ones that crash down on our heads from a blue sky. There have been as many plagues in the world as wars in history, yet always plagues and wars take people equally by surprise. Was this A, George Orwell, B, Winston Churchill, C, Albert Camus, D, A.J.P. Taylor? Was this A, Orwell, B, Churchill, C, Camus, or D, A.J.P. Taylor? Question number 5. You might wish that our government had paid attention to this quote before it started on its policies. "A pandemic is a lot like a forest fire. If caught early, it might be extinguished with limited damage. If allowed to smoulder undetected, it can grow to an inferno that can spread quickly beyond our ability to control it." Was this A, President Xi Jinping, B, President George W. Bush, C, President Barack Obama, or D, President Vladimir Putin? Who offered us this piece of wisdom? Was it Xi Jinping, George Bush, Barack Obama, or Vladimir Putin? And this is the final question in this round. Who wrote, "If a Black Death could be spread throughout the world once in every generation, survivors could procreate freely without making the world too full"? Was this A, Sigmund Freud, B, Thomas Malthus, C, Arthur Koestler, or D, Bertrand Russell? Was this Freud, Malthus, Koestler, or Russell? So just to recap on round 5. A, the sick and dying found most compassion from those who'd recovered from the disease, and they half entertained the vain hope that those who'd had it were in the future safe from any disease whatsoever. Was that A, Livy, B, Thucydides, C, Gibbon, and D, Hippocrates? Question number 2. Who wrote, "There are great fears of the sicknesses here in the city, it being said that 2 or 3 houses are already shut up, God preserve us all"? And then 8 months later, I've never lived so merrily as I have done this plague time. Was this A, John Milton, B, Daniel Defoe, C, Samuel Pepys, or D, John Bunyan? And then question number 3. It's striking that Native Americans evolved no devastating epidemic diseases to give to Europeans in return for the many devastating epidemic diseases that Indians received from the Old World. Was this A, William McNeill, B, Jared Diamond, C, Eric Hobsbawm, or D, Yuval Noah Harari? Question number 4. Who said there have been as many plagues as wars in history, and yet always plagues and wars take people equally by surprise? Was this A, George Orwell, B, Winston Churchill, C, Albert Camus, or D, A.J.P. Taylor? Question number 5. A pandemic is a lot like a forest fire. If caught early, it might be extinguished with limited damage. If allowed to smolder undetected, it can grow to an inferno. Who said this? Was it President Xi Jinping, President George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, or President Vladimir Putin? And the last question, question 6. If a Black Death could be spread throughout the world once in every generation, survivors could procreate freely without making the world too full. Was that A, Sigmund Freud, B, Thomas Malthus? That's right. I've got 2 B's here. Arthur Koestler or Bertrand Russell? And we're going on, I think, to round 6, the history and culture. This is the final round. Can we go on to the first question in round 6? I'd like to say, by the way, that this is the moment in which if we were all sitting in a room together, we would probably all be calling freely for another bottle of wine and volunteering to buy another 5 raffle tickets. So in between, could you let the same instincts play as you would let happen if we were all sitting in a room together, and just contribute very generously to the Rugby Portobello Trust? Question 1 in round 6. Who is known as the father of modern epidemiology, following his work on the causes of 19th century cholera epidemics? Was it A, Robert Stark, B, Ramsay Bolton, C, Jorah Mormont, or D, John Snow? Who is the father of modern epidemiology? Robert Stark, Ramsay Bolton, Jorah Mormont, or John Snow? And now question number 2. In which novel does a typhus epidemic break out in a school? Was it A, Oliver Twist, B, Jane Eyre, C, Sense and Sensibility, or D, North and South? Question 3. Who was the author of a book about the stories of 7 young women and 3 young men sheltering in a villa to escape a pandemic? Was it A, Kazuo Ishiguro, B, V.S. Naipaul, C, Giovanni Boccaccio, or D, Margaret Atwood? Who was the author of this book? Was it Ishiguro, Naipaul, Boccaccio, or Margaret Atwood? Question number 4. You'll have to decide for yourselves which, if any, of these facts about the 1918 Spanish flu are false. So for every single question, you need to decide whether it's true or false. A, that it originated in Spain. B, that the first wave was the most lethal. C, widespread immunization ended the pandemic. And D, that more Britons died from the flu than from World War I. So which of these are true and which are false? A, that it originated in Spain. B, that the first wave was the most lethal. D, that widespread immunization ended the pandemic. And D, that more Britons died from the flu than from World War I. Question 5, the penultimate question. Who developed the polio vaccine? Was it A, Daniel Hale Williams, B, Jonas Salk, C, Louis Pasteur, and D, Alexander Fleming? Which of these men developed the polio vaccine? Daniel Hale Williams, Jonas Salk, C, Louis Pasteur, or D, Alexander Fleming? And the last question in the quiz. What percentage of Europe's population died from the 14th century bubonic plague known as the Black Death between 1346 and 1353? Was it A, 5 to 7%, B, 10 to 15%, C, 20 to 25%, and D, 45 to 60%? What percentage died? 5 to 7, 10 to 15, 20 to 25, or 45 to 60? So just to recap that round, who is known as the father of modern epidemiology following his work on the causes of 19th century cholera epidemics? Was it A, Robert Stark, B, Ramsay Bolton, C, Jorah Mormont, or D, John Snow? Question number 2. In which novel does a typhus epidemic break out in a school? Was it A, Oliver Twist, B, Jane Eyre, C, Sense and Sensibility, D, North and South? Question 3. Who was the author of a book about the stories of 7 young women and 3 young men sheltering in a villa to escape a pandemic? Was it A, Kazuo Ishiguro, B, V.S. Naipaul, C, Giovanni Boccaccio, and D, Margaret Atwood? Question number 4. Which, if any, of these facts about the 1918 Spanish flu are false? A, it originated in Spain. B, the first wave was the most lethal. C, widespread immunization ended the pandemic. And D, that more Britons died from the flu than from World War I. Question number 5. Who developed the polio vaccine? A, Daniel Hale Williams, B, Jonas Salk, C, Louis Pasteur, and D, Alexander Fleming. And the last question. What percentage of Europe's population died from the 14th century bubonic plague known as the Black Death between 1346 and 53? Was it A, 5 to 7%, B, 10 to 15, C, 20 to 25, or D, 45 to 60%? And while you're considering your final answers there, and of course, only you are going to know whether you got them right or not, unless you'd like to join the chat function afterwards, when you can all say how well you've done on various rounds, then we'd like to encourage everybody who hasn't already done so, or who would like to give a little more to the marvellous work of the Rugby Portobello Trust, which supports teenagers playing football and young mothers and their children, does homework clubs and youth clubs, and helps people who need a hand in knowing how to navigate the difficult world that we live in at the moment. I'd like to encourage you all to give just as much as you would if you were sitting there with a glass of wine in your hands with all your friends. And here are some of the specifics about what your contributions can actually achieve. £20 can purchase a month's subscription, allowing us to reach and support even more children with their education. £50 would give more than 100 children in the homework clubs a chance to eat fresh fruit at every session. And £100 can buy sports equipment for the youth programmes. So if you haven't already got your credit cards out, please do so now. And now I'm going to give you the answers to the questions. Question number 1. The sick and the dying found most compassion from those who had recovered from the disease and hoped that in the future they would be safe from any disease whatsoever. The answer is Thucydides in the history of the Peloponnesian War. Question number 2. Who was the author who dreaded the plague and said afterwards, "I've never lived as merrily as I have done in this plague time"? It was, of course, the diarist, Samuel Pepys. Who observed that it was striking that Native Americans had evolved no devastating epidemic diseases to give to the Europeans in return for theirs? It was the writer Jared Diamond in Guns, Germs and Steel. Question number 4. Everyone knows that pestilences have a way of recurring in the world, and yet somehow they take us by surprise. The answer to that was Albert Camus. And question number 5. A pandemic is a lot like a forest fire. If caught early, it might be extinguished with limited damage. Who was the politician who foresaw that? It was President George W. Bush in a speech in 2005. And lastly, question 6. Who observed that if a Black Death could be spread throughout the world once in every generation, the survivors could procreate freely without making the world too full? It was Bertrand Russell. And now we move on to the answers to round number 6. Who is known as the father of modern epidemiology? It was, of course, not a character from Games of Thrones only, but Jon Snow. In which novel does a typhus epidemic break out in a school? The answer was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Who was the author of a book about 7 young women and 3 young men sheltering in a villa to escape a pandemic? It was Giovanni Boccaccio. Question 4, which, if any, of these facts about the 1918 Spanish flu are false? The answer is all 4 of them. It didn't originate in Spain. The first wave was not the most lethal. It was not ended by widespread immunization. And more Britons did not die from the flu than from World War I. Globally, more people were killed by the flu, but not in Britain. So you get 1 point for each correct answer in question 4. Question number 5, who developed the polio vaccine? Was it A, Daniel Hale Williams, or B, Jonas Salk? Question number 6, what percentage of Europe's population died from the Black Death? And the answer was an astounding 45 to 60%. Well, that brings us to the end of the quiz. And you can all start totting up your answers and telling all your friends and relations and unknown competitors about them online, because now it's time for me to hand back to Ian Hislop, who remarkably has found time to do this on top of everything else that he does in his life, from screenwriting, presenting Have I Got News from home, editing his magazine and cheering us all up every week. Ian, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. That's very kind. Well, those were tough questions, but I'm glad to see that Jenny kept the theme going and had a round of Game of Thrones questions. You'll probably have noticed today that our Foreign Secretary is also keen on Game of Thrones. He thinks that the tradition of taking the knee, which originally started with Black athletes in America, footballers, he thinks that that comes from Game of Thrones. So there we are, our Foreign Secretary. You're in safe hands. The man who didn't know that the crossing between Dover and Calais was quite busy for freight, now doesn't know where this symbol came from. Anyway, that's just to cheer you up at the end of the evening. No more politics, please. I'm now at this point asking you again to consider making a last donation, to go on the chat rooms, compare with other people how you've done. Did you get more points than everyone else? The target, as far as I know, it's at about 7.5, so we're a bit under on what we were hoping to raise tonight. So please do think, if you can, give a little bit more. Most charities are, as you know, pretty stuffed by the fact that they can't do any live events, and remote and virtual is the best that can be done. Everybody I know is having a bad time, but this charity supports the people who are least able to cope with the fact that we're all in this one together, as it were. So anyway, thank you very much for tonight. Can I thank you again to Jenni Russell and today's Goodwin, the host, to the sponsor, Miles Meacock, to Erin Coburn for organising this extraordinary event, and thank you to you for turning up virtually for a quiz in a good cause. Please do tell us what you got. Tell us who won out of your lot, and keep in touch with the charity if you can. Last appeal, please dig deep, as they used to say, in those pockets. And this is an extraordinary different type of quiz. I mean, if you give money now, you don't have to take home a painting or a villa somewhere where you can't go on holiday, or tickets for a football match you can't go to. You just get nothing. You just get the pleasure of having given some money to a really, really good cause. So that's quite enough from me from tonight, or indeed any other night. Thanks very much indeed, and good night.